Well, look at that. Fresh paint on a new Starship franchise. How often do we get to see that? I mean, we know the art types, we know the final destinations, we know the various sci-fi movies out there, but how often do you get to see a new sci-fi game shooter? Not very often. Usually it's brought back from 20 years ago, but this is Rigid Force Alpha, and it's pretty swish actually. It's like an old school art type, but not as satisfying. The story's pretty basic. There's some odd activity going on. It's almost like a plot for a Metroid game, I have to be honest. Some odd activity going on, and there's distress signals being sent out. Your ship is scrambled then to investigate the cause of distress, and there's escaped creatures from the laboratory essentially. So, yeah, it sounds like a Metroid game. It's a gorgeous 3D shoot 'em up though on a 2D plane, and it really feels like a semi-sequel to the PlayStation game. If you remember PlayStation 1 game, the square shooter Einhander, but obviously the graphics are like 20 years more recent and modern, and don't look like a PS1 game. So there's primary and secondary weapons. There's like a spread shot, there's homing missiles. That's the ones I remember, and the cool thing is you can move your weapons to front attack and then neutral and then back attack. So you actually need to do this because in some of the levels there's enemies that sneak up from behind and they'll shoot at you, and if you don't hit them then you're going to be losing that ship pretty quickly. So that adds a strategic element to the game that's not always there in shoot 'em ups. Yeah, and it's essential to take out the enemies in all directions in this game, pretty much. The enemies look good, but they seem similar to the enemies I've seen somewhere. I don't know if it's R-Type or some other famous shoot 'em up or G Darius, but like they look really similar, and like that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, if you're looking for something that brings back the old school vibes, then you'll probably love this. But it just feels like they took some enemy designs that are very similar to something we've seen before. Yeah, and some bosses are blatant rip-offs of bosses of they've seen in series like R-Type or G Darius. Like, so, I mean that's cool, but at the same time, you know, something new would be nice. The game, I feel like as a con, it's functional and it's entertaining, but as just tied into my last point, it lacks its own identity, unfortunately. And yeah, the graphics look amazing, the sound looks great, or sounds great while it's being played. It just doesn't leave a lasting impression. Like, I remember the title screen, I remember the spaceship, and I remember, like, you know, some of the bosses because they're, you know, spins on bosses we've seen before. But I feel like the controls are a little bit too sensitive. Like, there's parts where I was floating along and like I had to fly between two, like in a tight space between two like some sort of cavern, and I feel like my ship was like floating down or it was sinking for some reason, and it's like a brand new controller, so I know it's not the controller. I think it's the game's controls, the spaceship controls. So, and I feel like the game is too challenging for like mid-casual players on medium. It feels like easy mode is more like the normal mode, which is easy mode is the lowest you can go in difficulty. So you've got very limited lives and continues. I managed to get 2/3 of the way through the game. I just stopped there. It was challenging. It wasn't impossible. It just felt like it just, for easy mode, you think it would be easier and not like the normal mode. And it encourages you to get better, but it will keep like most casual players away unless you're really determined to see the rest of the game. The loss of all power-ups. This is fairly common in shoot 'em ups, but it happens each time you die. I feel like it's too extreme for this game. Like, it definitely bumps up the challenge on easy and too high, especially when facing harder enemy types and the bosses at the end of each stages. I just found like it was almost impossible to destroy some of the basic enemy types if you accidentally made a goof and crashed into an asteroid at the previous round, and then say you start at the same level and it's like, wow, my blasts are not like taking out these enemies, they're not doing enough damage. So ultimately, Rigid Force Alpha, it looks great and follows tried and true game mechanics to a modernized look. With enemies you've likely seen before. 2279, I feel like it's a little bit steep for the game you're getting here. You can beat it in an hour or two. I saw most of the game in that time. So you'll probably only continue playing if you want to see what the game has to offer. If you want to best it, like just get the best score, everything, beat the game on all difficulties, you know, maybe 2279 is not too bad, but it feels like a $10 or $15 solid shoot 'em up. I feel like it's one of the best looking shoot 'em ups, but in terms of the other ones I've played and with the music and everything from other games, I feel like it can't compete with the music. As good as the music is in this game, it's not the best music I've heard for a shoot 'em up, and it doesn't really get you pumped up so much as other games. So yeah, it won't dazzle you with anything you haven't seen before. If you've played a few other shoot 'em ups, maybe some of the best ever, it won't rock your boat or rock your spaceship. But yeah, if you've played the classics of the genre, I would say it's a solid 8 out of 10. Just for like the throwbacks, the throwback vibes. But it's unlikely you'll be blasting it and still playing it once you beat it or get close to beating it. And yeah, but if it gets you into the shoot 'em ups, then that's great. But it won't be the shoot 'em up, your favorite shoot 'em up of all time. Very unlikely. So keep on gaming and keep on blasting your blasters. Bye.